This video is not for you if you are looking for your data set or your data set is totally missing. Not that kind of missing. I'm talking about like some part of your data set is missing. But if all part of your data set is missing, I mean, maybe you could wait. You could find a way to look for it. Welcome to my cyberspace. Today I'll be talking about how to deal with missing data. Yes, missing data. Oftentimes, data in the real world are actually not as clean as what you would get from Cargo, you would get from US Census Bureau, or you would see all of those data that is readily available. Data in the real world is actually very messy. And almost every time as data experts, you would have to see data that have some levels of inconsistency, or you would find data that have some things that needs to be done. In fact, majority of the things that we do as data experts is to get the data ready for the analysis. The chunk of the stress, the chunk of the thinking is you're trying to look for where is this data, like is this accurate? Because that's actually like the fundamental to like your results. If your data is not correct, your data is not accurate, you're just building your house on like a foundation that is not solid. So if you have a data that has some level of missingness, this video is for you. And before we go into like the ways to deal with missing data, first question you want to ask yourself is, do I know why this data is missing? Do I think this data is missing at random? Do I think it's not missing at random? Let me give you a perfect example. Imagine you carry out a survey and you start to ask people their exact age. Certain persons, probably like females, might not want to, give out their exact age, or people from certain demographic might not want to say their exact age. So that could be one of the reasons why the data is missing. Another thing why data could be missing is probably also, asking like a sensitive question. Probably you ask people their exact income. People might decide not to fill in that data. So one of the things you want to find out is that this data that is missing, is it missing probably because, for example, maybe it's a question on probably like the gender, question on where do they live, and it was just probably omitted and it was missing at random. And if your data is actually not missing at random, and you could give some theoretical explanation as to why there is missingness in the data, then you might not really want to do some of the steps that I will mention in this video. But if you know that this is probably a data that is missing at random, this video is primarily for you. Now let's get right into it. So one of the steps you need to do is do not make any changes. I mean, this might look like I'm looking for ways to get my data ready and you're asking me not to make any changes. Sometimes doing nothing is actually the right thing to do. When I mean doing nothing, I'm not saying you should just leave your analysis and not report about the missingness. If you are a data expert, one of the things you would want to do is that you would want to write a report, or you want to inform the stakeholders some of the challenges that found with the data. You just want to be very transparent. And if you have like a very low missing rate, for example, something at 0.01, something like very minimal, or the missingness is not even on an important variable, what you would just want to do, just leave it that way. Because most likely that would not make a significant difference in your results. So you want to think about it intuitively and saying, do I have a higher missing rate? Also, this missingness, is it on a vocal variable? Is it on a vocal element of my analysis? So that's just one of your first steps. And the next thing you could also do is delete the data. Now, I'm not saying delete all your data. The difference between this first and the second is more like a point of comparison. Imagine you have 100,000 record. One of the first thing you could do is the first one is not making any changes, run the analysis that same way. Then the second thing you could do is to delete the record that you have missingness. For example, you have 100,000 records and probably about 10 was missing. Delete the record and see what the analysis look like with and without the missing data. So are you seeing like a huge difference in the frequency? Are you seeing a huge difference in the estimates? So those are one of the testings that you would do as a data expert. So there's a first aspect of deleting the data, the first aspect of just running the analysis with the missingness in the data. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to be like a doctor who is finding the right diagnostic for the the problem. So you try a bunch of things, because one fix cannot be able to fix everything, right? So one approach cannot fix all the different missingness for a data. And the next thing is imputation method. So what do we mean by imputation method? And this is actually very back. There are different strategies that you could use, and there are ones that are more advanced. It depends on your data structure. It depends on if you are missing on a numerical variable and a categorical variable. It depends on the method. I'm not going to be talking about that in this video. So some of that could be doing the average of your row of the particular column and just putting up that number. So you would have that guesstimation that, okay, if everybody is having 5, 4, 3, and there's a bunch of these numbers, so let me give you the average, because most likely you would probably be around that range. Another thing people do is also look at what are the characteristics of people that have complete record. Then you give them the similar number. So it's a little bit not complicated, but you would need some advanced knowledge to be able to do that when it comes to imputation, and you will want to know the right imputation. But before you get into imputation, you want to carry out the first step of deleting the record, or also running the analysis just as it is. Next thing is backward and forward fill. Backward and forward fill is similar to the previous method of imputation. It's trying to see, for example, if you have, it's a trend, right? Maybe you have different stores for the past 10 years. This store, the income or the revenue has been 20,000, 30,000, 20,000, and a particular year was missing. You would just kind of extrapolate and say, oh, if the last 5 years were 20,000, then if this year is missing, most likely this is the number. Or let's say you have the data for 5 years forward and you actually have missing for 2020. So what do? You kind of see, oh, based off of this record that I have, this is most likely going to be that number. But if you are going to be doing those sort of imputation, you also want to make it kind of clear in your report that this is one of the ways that you used to deal with the missingness. Lastly, I would say try different things. Try a bunch of things, ask questions from the stakeholder, how was the data gotten. Like I said, you could try all the steps I've mentioned. There are also different approach you could use to deal with missingness. I hope that this approach that I've given you would help you find your missing data eventually, if it's somewhere. And if you can't find your missing data, let me know in the comment section if you have any more question, or what are the various approach that you've used to handle missing data. If this video was a value for time, do well to like, subscribe and follow. Ciao.